advertisement on Facebook, on Twitter, and then we also plan over the summer to create YouTube channel with the lectures. So, okay, I think let's start. And I know that Fred Taikon also wanted to join and very much was waiting for your lecture, Daniel, but I don't know where is he, because he even wanted it to be in person in Uppsala in January to meet you.
Yeah.
But anyway, so let's start. And welcome everyone to the last our lecture in Romani Studies, International Interdisciplinary Seminar Series in Romani Studies, how it is called officially, which is organized by the Institute for Russian and Eurasian Studies, Uppsala University, and also organized by the Roma Foundation, Zurich, Switzerland, and also by the Uppsala Forum, Uppsala University. And today I am, you know me, I'm Anna Abakunova, and I'm, let's say, affiliated and representative of the Institute for Russian and Eurasian Studies, Uppsala University, and Stefan Lederich is the president of the Roma Foundation, Zurich, Switzerland. And this year, the entire year, we had collaboration, and which I think is very fruitful, and I'm very happy with this collaboration. So
it will continue next year. It will continue next year.
Yes.
So it's not a stop. It's a start.
No, for this academic year. I mean, it's the last hour lecture for this academic year, and I will present Daniel, and then maybe Stefan also will tell a couple of words. So today we have a lecture of our dear Daniel Vojek from the Institute of Social Science, Ivo Pilar, Zagreb, Croatia. And actually, it's our second attempt because, in fact, Daniel had to be in person and also on Zoom at Uppsala University in the end of January. And we wanted also to attach his lecture as one of commemorative events for basically Day of Remembrance, which is in Holocaust studies very established and attached to the Auschwitz concentration camp liberation, which also connects to the Roma, but unfortunately it didn't happen. Daniel was ill and we decided to postpone his lecture, and I'm very happy that we still have this lecture. And the lecture title is The Forgotten Crimes and the Mass Crimes Against the Roma in the Independent State of Croatia, which is during the Second World War, but starting from 1941. And Daniel is a lecturer, presenter, the member of IRA, and etc., 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 I would say. And very amazing researcher who researches Roma in Croatia and actually in former Yugoslavia as well for at least last 15 years. So we are very happy to have you, Daniel, here. And Stefan, if you want to say a couple of words.
Well,
please.
we're really happy to have you here, Daniel, because it's always a pleasure to listen about your research and to discuss also some of the themes. And we will continue to have good discussions about certain topics on which, yeah, I think there are tons of topics that are still open as such. So great, and thank you for the talk.
Thank you.
Okay, we go ahead, Daniel, floor is yours. We have as usual 45-50 minutes and Q&A session, and I just want again to point out that we record the presentations, and then we will of course cut out the conversations before which are not relevant, and sometimes after if they're too sensitive, and we will create the YouTube channel. Actually, we have the YouTube channel based on the Roma Foundation website, but we will upload the lectures, photographs, update everything. So after this, I'm silent, and Daniel, floor is yours.
Thank you, dear colleagues. Thank you for the beautiful words from my colleague and my friends, Anna and Stefan. Today's topic is the forgotten crimes and the mass crimes against the Roma in the Independent State of Croatia from 41 to 45, the year which Croatia was entering the Second World War until the finished in 1945. I often start. I often start with history, with the pointed out that Roma didn't live in the Croatian area from the 18th century, but from the second half of the 14th century, and probably research will show in much more earlier than that. And in this time, from the 14th century until the Second World War, we can see the history of the persecution, history of the assimilation, history that can be, say, the term about anti-Gypsyism, or in Croatian term, it will be anti-Roma discrimination and racism. Uh, I want to I want to just say that when we consider the position of Roma just before the Second World War, we must consider that we have 4 or 5 century long period of discrimination, persecution, attempt of resolving so-called gypsy question with the policy of forbidden entering of the so-called foreign Roma, and mass standardization or pressure to assimilate so-called domestic Roma. And this policy was also evident in the year between the Second World War and the First World War, in the years when Croatia entered a new state from former Habsburg monarchy, Austro-Hungarian monarchy, to the state of Kingdom of the Serbian, Croatian, and Slovenes. And from 1929, this state was called Kingdom of Yugoslavia. And on this slide, you can see the number of the Roma. This was official number from the last conscription done before the Second World War in 1931, where about 70,000 Roma were evident in the public conscription. Most of them lived, as you see, in the southern part of the Kingdom Yugoslavia, now
Daniel,
in Macedonia.
you're not sharing the slides.
I'm not sharing the slides. My apologies. My apologies. I
Sorry.
think that yes. Okay. No, no, no. Please excuse me. I said yes. You are screen sharing.
Yes.
I will try again. Okay. I will try again. Okay. Share. Share. Is it now okay?
Perfect. Now we see it. If you go to the little open book at the bottom, I think it would be nicer. No, the other one, not the presentation. This one. That's where you.
This one.
Yeah, this one is perfect.
Thank you, Stefan. Thank you, Stefan. Okay. As I said it, 70,000 Roma, most of them lived in Macedonia, in today's Kosovo and Serbia. When we are going from the south to the north, you will see decrease in the numbers of the Roma in area of the Croatia just before Second World War. We can see an official number is about 15,000. But please, as I said it, be very careful in using this number, because many of Roma then and still today, unfortunately, hide their own identity because of the fear of the discrimination. This was evident in 1931, and unfortunately in last conscription also in Croatia, that was 2 years ago in 2021, that is still about 2 parts, probably this is estimation, that still Roma hide their own identity. And as you see in this chart, Banat of Croatia was a special autonomic unit and under Kingdom of Yugoslavia that was established from 1939 until the 1941, when in April 1941 started the Second World War with attacking by the Nazi and their own allies. And in just a couple of days, Kingdom of Yugoslavia capitulated, and this Kingdom of Yugoslavia, it's proclaimed independent states of Croatia. But just before that we start talking about Second World War, it is very important to say something. I know that Stefan will be surely want to have this information that in former Yugoslavia, Kingdom of Yugoslavia, lived several groups of Roma. This name of the Roma was taken uh, from the text and from the authors from that time, from the time just before and at the beginning of Second World War. They called a lot of Roma so-called Turkish Gypsy. They lived in Ottoman part of the former Kingdom of Yugoslavia in Bosnia, Kosovo, and Montenegro and Macedonia. So-called white gypsy. This is nomadic part of especially Muslim sanitary population in Bosnia and Herzegovina, so-called German or Banat gypsy that lived in the Banat region, just very near in Hungary. Vlah gypsy, very important group of the Roma. They have very different in the language and the occupation. Arlie, Arabach, and etc. etc. I here now is showing also the photograph of the Roma, so-called Koritari or Bayash population that had settled in the Croatia in middle of the 19th century from the Wallachia and Moldavia. You know the story about emancipation from the slavery. And today, it is very important to say that today 2/3 of this of total Roma population in Croatia is Bayash population, and this is and in the years just before the Second World War, this population was called Koritari because they make the korita. This was something like for the washing of the clothes and similar things. As I said it, after the brief military intervention, you can say, by the Axis power led by the Nazi Germany with Italy, Hungarian, Bulgarian forces, army of the Kingdom of Yugoslavia capitulated, and in 10 of the April, pro-fascist a group called Ustasha came to power in Croatia with a lot of support of the Germans and Italians. In just a few days, they passed the racial laws, in which it must be emphasized that in these laws, it is especially emphasized the Roma and Jewish population, especially in the legal provision of the race, legal provision of the protection of Aryan blood and the honor of the Croatian people, and legal provision of the citizenship. What is important to say that these racial laws is like introductory in the Ustasha genocidal policy towards Roma. Because of this law, they, in legal terms, defined the Roma as non-Aryans, and as such, they cannot become a citizens of the Ustasha independent states of Croatia. And this is I would say, opening the door for the next step in the genocidal politics or towards the Roma. When Ustasha came to power, often they ask me, my students and other scholars, did Ustasha, before they came to power in Croatia, had a special policy towards the Roma? I have researched, especially because Ustasha, as I must remind you, was, I would say, pro-fascistic movement primarily against the Serb politics in Kingdom of Yugoslavia, led by Anto Pavelić, who emigrated in 1929 in Germany and Italy. And they, in their own documents, publications, newspaper, didn't stated any firm policy towards Rome. But they tried to state that Roma were genetically connected with the Serb population. They said that Roma are the Serbs and Serbs are the Roma, and especially royal family of Karađorđe, which they stated often in their speeches that this is the Gypsy family. And especially, it is important that some politician like Dragiša Cvetković, who was the prime minister in Yugoslavia, 1939-1940, he was described and defined as a Roma, but in a pejorative sense of the word, as they want to say that he is like criminal, like a stereotypical picture of the Roma, asocial, criminal, and etc. They did not have the special politics, but they passed the racial law. Next step was consideration what to do with the Roma, with the so-called Gypsy population. Then they thought, okay, we must do something with them because they are like centuries old problem for the local population, and some initiative come from one city, one place very near Zagreb called Križevci. This was when the population said, please resolve our policy toward Roma, because toward Gypsy, because they are hurting our economic. They are filthy. They are asocial. They do not work. They are work shy. They are blamed for the broadening the epidemic amongst the domestic animals, etc., etc. Behind this accusation was their motivation to grab their house and their lands. They were very interesting because the Roma had very rich lands and animals in that area. But okay, this initiative come from the Križevci. They forward this initiative to the Ministry of Internal Affairs, and Ministry of Internal Affairs says, okay, this is not our job. We just established a new Institute for Colonization, and this institute must think about solution for this Gypsy question. And solution is from the 19th, 18th century is so-called colonization of the Roma. What that means in the practice? In the practice means that all the Roma must be held on one place under the police and army supervision. This is, I can see, like in the camps, so-called camps that was established in the Germany just a decade ago. And they passed some regulation, and what was the problem for those authorities is that they do not know what is exact number of the Roma and where the Roma is living, in what number, what kind of economic position they are, and so on. And this is the reason why they ordered to conduct a census, especially for the Roma population, for the Gypsy population, to have the personal information, data about their lifestyle. Are they sedentary? Are they nomadic? What is their occupation? And this census was held at the beginning of the July in 1941 in the whole the Independent States of Croatia. Until this year, I have found about 30 about this census, number of the census that held in the Independent States of Croatia, but I didn't. This was like a 10%, maybe 10% of all this kind of census, and we don't have still complete number of the Roma at the beginning of 1941 because of the war. I must remind you that census uh, was planned for the April 1941 in the month that because of the Second World War the census was postponed, and this is the reason why the Ustasha brought this idea about census. Okay, they gather the information. They gather information where the Roma live, what is their economic position, and so on. But colonization didn't happen. And in the documents, in the testimony from the Ustasha leaders from that time, you will not find any information why they abandoned the idea of the deportation of the Roma, of the so-called colonization of the Roma. My suggestion, my idea, my thinking is that because of the rebellion, that uprising of the especially Serbian population in the some parts of the Independent State of Croatia, that was at the end of the June, at the beginning of the July 1941, that brought very destabilization in the interior Independent States of Croatia. That this is the reason why the authorities abandoned this idea, and they uh, they decided for the idea to deport all Roma in the camps to the camps, and then we come to the with the deportation of Roma to the camps, especially in the mid 1942 to Jasenovac's camp. They also have the policy of mass crimes against the Roma. At the beginning of my research, like 10, 15 years ago, I would not say 20, Anna, but it will be this year 20 years that I researched this topic. I didn't know that so many crimes against Roma were done by the Ustasha. In the literature, they just stated one or two mass crimes. But when I started to research, especially the topic of mass crimes as a part of the Ustasha policy, I found out more and more crimes. And I'm all the time working in archive, and just last month I found a new mass crimes against the Roma. But this is still a research, and I didn't include it in this part. Main part of the Ustasha policy was policy of mass crimes against Roma. And the focus was, this mass crime was in the Jasenovac system of the camps. We cannot see Jasenovac as one camp. We must see as a collection of the one of the as a system of smaller camps. And first deportation was deportation of Roma in summer 1941 from the area of the northern part in Podravina to the first concentration camp in Croatia. It's called Danica. It's very near Koprivnica. But what is their connection with the Jasenovac camp? Because these Roma prisoners, they said about 700 of them were just a few days located in this Danica camp, and then afterward they were deported in new opened Jasenovac camp. And we have recorded that first deportation of Roma in August 1941 come from Danica camp to Jasenovac. This is very important. The crucial date for the genocidal political against the Roma, Ustasha genocidal political against the Roma, was on 19th of May 1942. 19th of May, the Ministry of Interior, with the support of the army and police, issued a special order that all the Roma from independent states of Croatia must be deported to Jasenovac camp. And in just 3, maybe 4 months, next 4 months until the end of the summer 1942, all the Roma from the independent, or most of them, were deported to Jasenovac. And they have been deported in 3 locations of the Jasenovac: Camp 3C, Uštica, and Gradina. Uštica was one Orthodox Catholic village, mostly Orthodox, in Jasenovac camp system that was deported from the Serbian Serbian population at the beginning of May 1941. 42, and this is the reason why this village were empty when the new groups and groups of Roma come, and they were located in Uštica, and most of them were killed in Uštica. And also, because of high number of the Roma inmates in Uštica, they were transferred to Gradina. Gradina is part of the Jasenovac camp on the Bosnia and Herzegovina today side, where the most of the killings of the Roma and other prisoners happened. The question of how many Roma were killed in Jasenovac camp is in connection with how many Roma were killed in the Independent State of Croatia, and then I will get at the end of this presentation to have some time to speak about this problem. But the problem with the researching of the position of the Roma in Jasenovac system of the camps was especially problem in the questionable determination of the exact number of the Roma victims. We don't have the exact numbers because we have only some saved list of deportation from some places in independent states of Croatia. But we don't have any list from the camp authorities that they listed the names and surnames, year of birth of the Roma and any other inmates. This was not saved because by the end of the war in 1945, Ustasha, when they know that they will lose the war, they burn most of this kind of documentation. And this is the problem of the lack of documentation by the camp authorities. Also, who is the Roma, who isn't? One part of the Roma were deported as a Roma, but also some of them were deported as a member of other ethnicity, as a Serbs, as a Muslim, as a Bosniak, etc., etc. Because Roma often hide their own identity, they present themselves as a part of the majority population. And at the end, the problem is the prevalence of the oral testimony as a primary historical source. We all know that oral testimony is a great source, but they also have some questionable, I would say, questionable issue in what time they are done, who was recording this testimony, in which place, and etc., etc. For example, most Roma give their own testimony in 1951, 52 because of the war trials against Andrija Tuković, who was Prime Minister of Interior Affairs in Independent State of Croatia, and after war he successfully escaped from Ireland to the United States, and Yugoslavia, Socialistic Communistic Yugoslavia, asked for their deportation to Yugoslavia because of the war crimes, and one of part of their accusation against Andrija Tuković was the part of the war crimes against Roma. And the most, we have 20, 30 and more testimony from Roma in 1951, 52 done before the courts about what happened to the Roma during the war. But the question is that most Roma were illiterate, and they do not know what is written in this testimony because they have only with their finger signed the documents and so on. And we must ask themselves ourselves of is this I would say objective good source for using. As always, be very careful. Try to have another source backing up, but be at the end be very careful in using this kind of sources. Banja. Banja region is a region where you will see part of the Gora parish and with the location of the Glina and Sisak. And this was the place where the most of the Serbian population live. And this is the reason why when Ustasha came to power, just a few weeks after it, they succeeded of power, they started to commit mass crimes against the Serbian population. Why I'm emphasize this? Because in 1941 and especially in the first half of 1942, the Roma were often collateral victims of Ustasha politics towards the Serbian population. For the Ustasha, the arch enemy of the Ustasha, of the Croatian people, in their ideological thinking, is the Serb population. Then the Jews, then the Roma, then the partisans, etc., etc. But you have now in this slide pointed out several dates. In the May 1941, we have recorded first deportation and killing of the Roma in the vicinity of Glina. Then at the end of the June 1941, we have a partisan anti-fascist uprising, and because of so-called peaceful military operation done by the Ustasha, they often killed the civilian Serbian population. With the civilian Serbian population, they killed also Roma. That was what's evident in 24th of July 1941 in Banski Grabovac. Also, they killed several days later in the vicinity Donje Bučice another 11 Roma. And this still we have we must do a new research, deeply research in finding new documentation, new archival sources to see what happened and what is the reason for such of the violent policy Ustasha towards the Roma. What is evidence is absence of Roma testimony. We know all these killings by the Serbian testimony of Serb survivors. That is very important to state this. Also, Kordun, very near region to Banja, also with dominant Serbian population, and they have destabilization of situation in military sense by the end of 1941, and this is the reason why the Ustasha started so-called December offensive against the partisans and consequence of this was high number of the killing of the Serbian civilian population. And again, the Roma population were in this area collateral victims of the Ustasha policy toward the Serbs. You will see this number of the Roma killed in December and the beginning of January to the Orthodox Christmas, January the 7th, 1942. Most of the Roma were killed in vicinity of the Vrginmost district and Karlovac district. Again, as in Banja, absence of Roma testimony. We didn't have any testimony from Roma survivors from that. We all know from the Ustasha authority documents by the perpetrators and some of them survivors of the Serbian population. In Bosnia and Herzegovina, this was one of the biggest mass crimes that happened done by the Ustasha against the Roma population. This was in the fall of 1944, where the military operation, again, you will see the connection. Crimes were often held as a part of the military operation done by Ustasha with support of the Germans and other allies to the Ustasha. In this case, Roma were not the victims, collateral victims of the Serbian population policy, but they were the direct victims of the Ustasha policy towards the Roma. This happened in September, October 1944, when the military operation come very near the Bosanska Gradiška, 7-8 villages that was mostly populated by the Roma. And the Ustasha authorities, as I interpreted their own documentation, military documentation, see that Roma population in that area was very questionable for the security issues. Excuse me. And what they do? Again, they decided to deport all the so-called population that can be destabilizing for them on this area to Jasenovac camp. They started to deport them, and they, I don't know why, killed them in one forest very near Jasenovac camp, or camp so-called Stara Gradiška, that was imprisoned by the women and children. What is the problem? We don't know exact date when it happened. Probably in the middle of the October 1944. We don't know have the number of the killed Roma. Some say 200, others said 600. New data from the Bosnian historian, a Serbian historian from Bosnia and Herzegovina, from the Museum of Bosanska Gradiška, Mr. Vujčić, stated about 900 of them died in this massacre against the Roma. This is new data, just published 2 months ago, paper about it. What is the problem? I would say problem is that we have testimony, but this testimony is very lacking in the, I would say, in the determining exact number of the Roma killed, where they killed, in what way they killed. For example, Nadir Dedić, who was the Roma, who unfortunately died last year, and he was the last of the Roma that survived the Jasenovac camp in Croatia. He gave several testimony in his life about this massacre, because he was one of the family who successfully escaped from this massacre from Bosanska Gradiška villages, and he later joined the partisans. But according to his testimony, we don't know what, because he used several different numbers, several different places where they happen and so on. And this is most confusing in determining exactly when, what, or what number, etc., etc. But what is very important to say, that the Roma in the vicinity of these villages after the war in 1970 erected first monument for the Roma victims in Yugoslavia. This was in the village of Žerjavice, which is part of these villages in Bosanska Gradiška. And in this monument stated that about 600 of Roma died in this massacre. But still, 8 years ago, after this event, we are still lacking of knowledge of determining what really happened. And yes, the problem source based on oral testimony, as I said, the example of Nada Dedic, critical analysis of sources. We must be very careful when we use the sources done, especially by the perpetrators, by the Ustasha, because they hide their own dimension of the crimes against the Roma. Hrastina. Hrastina was one of the also most tragic mass crimes done by the Ustasha at the end of the war. This happened in 24th of April 1945, just 2 weeks after the war was ended. This happened in one small village very near Zagreb called Hrastin. What happened? About 58 Sinti from the Germany and Austria who escaped because of persecution in Germany at the beginning of Second World War to Yugoslavia, and they declared themselves during the war as a Czech population and as a Czech artist. And they have these circus shows done all the place in Independent State of Croatia. Just we have also evidence that they held these shows also on the partisan free territory, what is very interesting. At the end of the war, they come to the villages where they have the circus show done for the SS military units located in this village called Donji Kraj. After that, Ustasha also, who was located in that village and neighboring villages, see this show, and they asked that they held another show for them. They accepted, and Sinti artists held this show for them. And after the show, in the late evening, the local Ustasha militia came, and they held them and taken to the Hrastina, a nearby village to Hrastina, one abandoned estate where they tortured, raped, and killed 40 or 44 of them. This is also questionable in determination of the exact number of them. And they buried them in this location. At the end of the war, in 8th of the May, it was declared as the end of the Second War in Yugoslavia. And in just few days after, the local population come dig these Roma victims, Sinti victims, and they buried them in the local cemetery in Maria Gorica. After the war, it happened distortion. Perpetrators was declared as the SS members, as perpetrators as a German, victims as a Jew. local branch of the anti-fascist veterans, partisan veterans, erected in 1977 on this location of the cemetery of the of the place where they were buried, a monument for this victim. And on the monument, it is stated that victims are the Jews and perpetrators are the Germans. But successfully, 3 years ago, Mario Šimunković and George Mihovilović. George works in the Jasenovac Memorial Site, and Mario Šimunković is a local history teacher in that area and also passionate historian. They analyze this case and write a book where they with a lot of arguments and historical sources state that these were not the Jewish victims, but it was the Sinti victims, and the perpetrators are not the German SS, but the perpetrators is so-called Luborichevci. It's so-called Ustasha members from the Jasenovac camp who withdrew from Jasenovac because of the partisan liberation of that camp. And they did this crime because they see a lot of gold and cinema machine amongst these Sinti. There, I would say that motivation beside the sexual and other was also the pure criminality, pure theft. And this is why from 2022 until today, we have a third commemoration this year held for the Sinti Roma victims in Maria Gorica on initiative of the Roma community led by the Veljko Ketazi representative in Croatian parliament. This is very important because we now have, I would say, systematic cultural remembrance for for these victims that are not Jews, but they are Sinti, and the perpetrators was described as Ustasha. But we are now getting closer, Anna, I know, for the finishing of this presentation, but I must save some place to say something about the German military unit that did the mass crimes against the Roma population, because the Roma were not only victims of the Ustasha policy, but were also victims of the German policy. And this happened in the today Bosnia and Herzegovina, then part of the Independent State of Croatia, in one place called Podorašac, very near Konjic, where the 7th SS Prince Eugen division did the mass crimes against the Roma. In August 1943, I brought here the testimony on one survivor, Sejdo Ahmetović, that I found in archive of Bosnia and Herzegovina. He describes that German, because of accusation of the local teacher, Jelic, who accused this Roma that they are helping partisans. And because of this, these SS German military officers with the units came to this village, and they held all the Roma, 33, 36 of them, and they have pushed them in their own fat, and after that they bombarded. They threw their bombs in this house, and they killed all the Roma in that way. What is very interesting in this case was the position of the local teacher, who blamed, according to this testimony, local Roma, that this local Roma has something still from him, and in revenge, he accused Roma for collaborating to the partisans, to the local German military units, and this is the reason why the German killed 36 of the Roma. This is very new crime, and this I know because of Milovan Pisari. Milovan Pisari gave me this testimony from the Archive of Yugoslavia about this case, what happened in the 1944 when about 7 of the Roma families were taken by the Ustasha and by the German military units to place called Jezeran, especially to the one hill between Križopolje and Jezerane. It's called this hill is called Maljan Hill. They brought them in this hill and they kill all of them. Why? What is the reason? We don't know. We don't know. This is still part of my research, and I hope that I have special project now, and I hope that in several years, that it is 4 years project, that I will, after new deep research, I will have the answer to explain what happened and what is the reason for such crime of killing 7 Roma families, 38 of Roma. Also, besides Germans, besides Ustasha, crimes against Roma were also done by the Chetniks. Chetnik military was a part of the Serbian paramilitary units in the Kingdom of Yugoslavia, occupied Kingdom of Yugoslavia, run by the Draža Mihailović. And this Chetnik military units has the goal of establishing the Serbian, at the beginning, Kingdom of Yugoslavia, but at the end, they want to establish the Serbian kingdom on the territory of the Kingdom of Yugoslavia, but they collaborated especially with the Germans and Italians, and their role was very negative in the Second World War, especially in connection to the Roma. We have a lot of crimes done by the Chetnik, especially on the territory of Serbia, Kosovo, and some crimes in the Montenegro region and also Macedonia region done by the Chetniks. But in this case, I focused on the Independent States of Croatia, and I found this crime that committed 40 Chetnik soldiers on the beginning of 1941, when they come to the village, so-called Roma Gypsy village, Vlaški Brijeg, very near, just north of the Banja Luka, and they looted the Roma houses and they take 10 of the Roma to the forest. Nobody knows what happened to them. Probably they were shot, they were killed, but this is also important to state the Chetnik. Also, we have in October 17, 1942, on the area very near in Moravice. This is the position of the place of Croatia called Modruš, where they Chetnik military units in October killed 14 members of the Roma family Hudorović. They were tied with wire and forcibly locked in their own houses, and they were live burned by the Chetniks. What is the motivation for these crimes? We know these crimes because of the report done by the Ustasha military authorities, but we don't know anything why did this so awful crime happen that they killed 14 of the Roma by torturing them in their own houses. Now I will be finished. I think that I have only 2 or 3 slides left. The number of the Roma victims, I don't know. Nobody knows. This is only, they only have the estimation. Why we don't know? Because we don't know how many Roma lived at the beginning of war. We also don't know exact who was the Roma, who was not. A lot of Roma hide their own identity, describe and identify themselves as a Bosnian, as a Muslim, as a Croat, as a Serbs, etc., etc. And we all have this estimation. I put this estimation here, from 7,000 to 100,000 Roma. For example, 90,000 Roma is the number that Drago Ljubacković published last year in his book Samudari Pen in Independent States of Croatia. My estimation is between 15 and 30,000. But the evidence is that after the war, in first conscription done in 1948, only 405 Roma declared themselves as a Roma in Socialistic Republic of Croatia. But we must exclude 215 Roma from the place called Beli Manastir. This was the place where during the war was occupied by Hungarians. And if we review this number, we have only 200 of Roma that declared themselves as Roma after the war. And the pre-war number of the 15,000 to 16,000 Roma was barely make it in the last conscription from 2021 in Republic of Croatia, where about 70,000 Roma declared themselves as a Roma. We say that after the consequences after the Second World War are still going on in demographic place of the Roma community. What is the problem? Problem is lack of sources, especially exact demographic situation about the Roma before and after the Second World War. Lack of documentation from the Ustasha authorities, especially in Jasenovac. We don't know how many Roma died in Jasenovac. According to the conscription done by my good colleagues in the Jasenovac Memorial Site, there is about 16,000 of names of the Roma victims in Jasenovac, but this isn't final data about Roma victims in Jasenovac. For Dennis Reichardt, he stated that proportionately speaking, the largest genocide against the Roma population during the Second World War was carried on in the territory of Independent States of Croatia. I'm very near to say yes about this when we have the numbers, but I don't want to be a part of so-called number games. In ex-Yugoslavia, and I would say in most of East European country, this is so-called distortion politics. Some of them, they say that the Roma were not killed in Independent States of Croatia, that Ustasha was good for the Roma, they preserve Roma, etc., etc. And some others say that 100,000 of the Roma was killed in the Croatian territory of Kingdom Yugoslavia, but they all are lacking arguments in historical sources. Their own estimation. We don't have any data, and this is the so-called number of the games, or we can say in IRA, this is a prime example of distortion of the history. For concluding remarks, what we needed? We needed support for systematic future research, especially in the archives, museums, among the Roma community. We know that that sources that we must find, we must be very critical about it. to find as much as possible, to find what is reality, what is emphasizing distortion, etc. At the end, we must focus on the victims, on the memory of the victims. Culture of remembrance is very important. We must find the places where the Roma were killed. Where the Roma were killed in one or two or in mass numbers. We must preserve these places. We must save the places, erect the monuments, included this kind of history as a history in our curriculum, in our education. And we must also bear in mind that did not all the Roma was killed in Jasenovac camp, but also some significant number were also killed outside camps. And this is, I would say, my primary motivation for a new project that is focused on the mass crimes, to honor the memory of the Roma victims. And with that, I will finish my presentation and thank you for your attention. And I will be happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you so much, Daniel. I think it was, for me at least, it was the most informative lecture about Croatia for many years. And also I was listening to you during different conferences, but we never had so much time. Always it's like 15-20 minutes. And during last IRA conference, they wanted to cover everything possible. So there was no real focus. But here, I don't know, I think it's really very important to have you here, and thank you so much again for this presentation. And please stop to share your screen.
Okay.
Yeah, and now we can go for the questions. You can ask questions, everyone can unmute yourself, start video or write on chat as you wish. So, and as usual, okay, I will give some moments to, oh, okay, Stefan, okay, because I also have a number of questions as usual. Okay, let's
As
start with
usual.
Stefan.
Daniel, you mentioned many groups of perpetrators. Did you also find some of the examples of partisans who killed Roma? Like we have the cases also in Slovenia that I know of. Did you also find that in Croatia?
Yes. Yes, I have found, but not in such a mass scale as in Slovenia.
Yeah.
More and more I found this documentation. For example, in 1942, in vicinity of Zagreb, where I live, some local partisan hanged two Roma because of the pressure from local population who accused them Roma for the criminality. And they hang these two Roma. Also, I have found that that partisan killed Roma in Dalmatia, in northern part of Dalmatia, because they were accused to helping the local Italian forces. I know for some Roma that was participated in the mass crimes against Serbian population in the Sisak area and other area, when they were, I would say, part of this kind of Ustasha repressive system. Also bear in mind that some of the Roma, until the end, had fought in the military units of the Ustasha, but they fought as a Croatians, not as a Roma, and they did, and as this part also mass crimes against the population. Yes, partisan partisan troops also killed Roma, but not in so many numbers. The similar accusation with Slovenia. I have a lot of other sources to state, and we also must bear in mind that this was usually the politics of the local military units in the field, and where they brought, because of the local population, accusation against the Roma. There was blame, and they want to state it: we are new government, we are new authorities. Local population must be safe under our control. And the Roma were also in that way collateral victims of this kind of policy.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. So Paula Trevisan also wrote that thanks, Daniel. It was very interesting.
Oh, dear Paula, yeah.
And okay, then I will ask a question, and maybe somebody else also have questions or comments. In the beginning, you mentioned several Romani groups. And my question is if you found any documents about the treatment of the Roma, not as just Roma, but by the groups, and if this treatment was different.
No, for the Ustasha, gypsy is gypsy. Maybe they have the policy, so-called white gypsy. White gypsy is a special case about Roma Muslim sanitary population in Bosnia that at the beginning of war, as I said, this conscription in December 1941, this was the motivation that some of the Muslim intellectuals in Bosnia, with the help, with the support of the Muslim Islamic authorities in Sarajevo and other places, rebelled against this kind of practice done by the Ustasha and stated with special commission, with special elaborate, that this Roma, this so-called white Roma, is not Roma, is not Gypsy, but they are Roma. They are Muslim. They are good Muslim, and then they must be protected as Muslim. I must just remind you that in the Ustasha ideological policy of the new state, Muslims are considered as the best Croatians. This is historical lacking and understanding from the Ottoman occupation of the Bosnia and Herzegovina, where a lot of the Croatian Christian population just rename themselves as a Muslim, and they preserve the pure Croatian blood and genes. And after the Ustash came to power, they stated based on the politics from the 19th century of Ante Starčević, that Muslim is better Croatian people that Croatians are. I just now caricature these kind of questions, but yes, this was protection done by the Muslim intellectuals with Islamic forces, Islamic authorities in Sarajevo, and they also successfully had convinced the Ustasha government to exclude the so-called white gypsy from the persecution. Also, when they deported from 19th of May 1942 all the Roma to Jasenovac camp, again the Muslim intellectuals gathered, and they signed a very important document called Zenica Declaration from Zenica. This is the town in northern Bosnia, when they stated the same: we must protect the Roma, but not as a Roma, but they are Muslim, and nobody must hurt them because they are part of the Muslim community. And also, I just found that also from Bugojno resolution was the same, a declaration made in June 1942, but new research also that I just found in military archives in the Belgrade just last month or in April this year, that in Tuzla and Derventa, they also have the local initiative from Muslim population in protecting the so-called white gypsy. This is the only case that I see that the special attention was brought to the one Roma groups. For me, very interesting is also the position of so-called Russian Gypsy, Anna, that was a part of so-called emigration from the Russia Civil War at the end of the First World War that evidently come to the Montenegro and Dubrovnik coast at the beginning of 1920s. And I found in my doctorate thesis evidence of the Russian Roma in the Dalmatia, Montenegro, and part of the Bosnia and Herzegovina, but I didn't find anything about it, about this group, what happened during the Second World War. And this is also very interesting question to research, especially for my colleague in Montenegro. I think that they successfully hide in the mountains. This is mine, and they later declared that themselves as maybe part of the Roma community there, Gabeli, etc., or maybe a part of the other communities. But what happened to the Russian Gypsies is unknown. We know about it. We know that they were there, and this was not small numbers. This was in the hundreds of them, according to my sources and the newspaper just before the Second World War.
Thank you so much. And here's the question. Okay, Russian Roma, you mean Ruska Roma Haladitka, or could be Vlah,
They will say
Serve?
Russian Gypsy, Ruski Tsigani. They stated the Ruski Tsigani. Only one article was published in mid-war years about the Ruski Tsigani. It is only 1.5 pages, but nobody knows what is especially about it. I found the documentation from the prisons in the Kingdom of Yugoslavia, where I have the photo of some of these Roma, so-called Russian Gypsy, with the names, surnames, date of birth from the Soviet Union, and also from the newspaper article.
Then, if you have the names, probably we can identify if they were Haladitka or not just by the names, because we also know some family names in Ukraine which were spread and in Russia, and then we can think from where they actually arrived and if they were Russian Roma, in fact.
As I stated, we cannot see the Roma history as a history on one state, one people. We must see broader pictures because of their migration, connection, economic activities. A lot of Roma, for example, Paula is here. Paula can talk about a lot of Roma that was migrated at the beginning of the war from the Croatia and Slovenia to the Italy. And they were interned in the camps, and they later survived. And the Roma community who had the Croatian the descendants from them. This is why we need the international project, international cooperation. You know, this is why this is so complex. It's very hard to research. We don't have archival sources that state in one archive you have special military funds for the Roma. No, for example, we have this for the Serbs, for the Jews, for the partisans, but Roma were also put in some sentences in the funds for the partisans, for the Jews, for the Serbs, and so on. And every document is gold, as I said, to find gold, because it's much more closer to explain what happened to this community before, during, and after the war. We are not now talking the great marginalization culture of remembrance after the war. Very shameful thing, especially for the communistic Yugoslavia and the lands of the Eastern Europe, where they forgot about this victim, marginalized. And now, just in later decades, they are still beginning of the, I would say, systematic commemoration of the Roma.
Yeah, I can hear you because in Ukraine is the same situation. And before I will give Paul a word, I just wanted to mention that actually Paula Trevisan presented also in our series. It was in very beginning when we didn't have Zoom yet. Actually, we decided to have Zoom on the day of Paula's presentation because there was a high demand. I received a lot of email about her presentation, about saving, rescuing
Paula
Croatian.
research is very important for understanding from Croatian and Slovenian side. And her research is crucial for understanding. And this is the why, Paula, as you can confirm, we were thinking about international project done by this. What happened to the Roma on the position under the Italian rule before and during the Second World War? Because the deportation of the Roma started not at the beginning of war, but before the Second World War, from the Istria, Dalmatia, Slovenia, etc.
Yeah, just to promote Paula, she recently published a book in Italian, which included her research as anthropologist and also as historian, because in October 22, when she presented for our series, exactly, she presented like more historical facts, events about Croatian and Slovenian Roma who escaped to Italy. And one more remark about Muslim Roma. Actually, I see very similar situation. Again, we can draw parallels between Muslim Roma in Croatia and what happened in Crimea. Because in Crimea, also Taifalar were saved by Crimean Tatars as Muslim community. And they declared that they're Muslims, in some cases that they're Tatars, but in most cases that they're Muslims, and they protected the entire Romani Taifalar community in Crimea. So it's also a very interesting case.
I will just add something very new information. This year it will be published with Stefan paper from the Sarajevo Roma conference that held in February this year. I had wrote with my good colleague Paula Simon from Heidelberg University a paper about number of the white gypsy Roma just before the Second World War, where Paula and I found it in Gazi Husrev University Bibliothèque in Sarajevo that more than 20,000 of the white gypsy were conscripted just before the war. In public reception, they stated only 1,000 or 2,000 of them. What is the number? It's like 10 times more the numbers that we know. And this is the reason why the Muslim authorities and Muslim intellectuals were very interested in protecting this population because of the very importance for the Muslim population in Bosnia.
Paul.
Oh, microphone.
Yeah, you are muted.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to ask Daniel his opinion about the controversial film Dar of Jasenovac, and if it somehow to the viewer who is uneducated gives some information about the fate of Roma in Jasenovac. Thank you, Daniel.
Okay, yes. I often spoke about this film with my colleagues in Serbia. As a historian, we are very critical about this film. But we must see this film as a part of the so-called part of number games between the Croatian, Serbian, Bosnian, and other historiography in this place. Darafur Jasenovac had also one historical value, but as a historian, we must be very critical, and the Roma that show in that film is not right, I would say, historical picture of the situation of the Roma in Jasenovac camp. Unfortunately, we don't have any such films done that showed especially Roma inmates in Jasenovac. in Yugoslav socialistic kinematography, we have several films that show deportation of the Roma, from examples Hitler in U mom Sokaku, from the deportation from the Vojvodina and Slavonian villages to Jasenovac, etc., etc. But be very careful. You don't use this kind of film for the education. I will not recommend for educational and other work towards pupils, students, and etc. But if you see, this is one, I would say, one view of what happened to the Serbian population in Jasenovac. For me, the question of the Serbian population are still not yet full research in Croatian historiography in comparison to Serbian Serbian historiography, and etc. I say, see the film, but be very skeptical in using this film is in any other view as just an entertainment.
Thank you, Paul, for the question,
you.
and Daniel for the answer, and Hussein.
Hello, hello. Thank you, Daniel. It's nice to see you and nice to listen to your presentation. I learned a lot. My question is how the history writing is evolving on this issue, the crimes committed by the Ustasha. What is the situation at present time? How through decades the Croatian nationalist history writing was writing about this, if they were ever writing about it, or the more balanced non-nationalist history writing? What is the politics about the historiography and the memory at large? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Hussein. You ask a very good question that is connection with what I said with culture of remembrance. After the Second World War, Yugoslav and Croatian historiography just poorly marginalized this topic. We only have one Jewish historian in 1980s, Narcisa Lengo-Krisman, that started with the first published scientific paper in 1986. She published a book in 2003 about this, and in this book about genocide against the Roma, Jasenovac 1942, she focused only in 1 year of Jasenovac camp. And she opened the door for the research of the mass crimes against Roma. Before her, the crimes against Roma were usually only just purely mentioned in some monography of some village, city, area, region in Yugoslavia that stated, yes, they come to the village, they killed 70 Serbs and 10 of them, 10 of Roma. This kind of source. But they do not explain why, what is the reason, why the Roma were collector victim and so on. But now, I must be very optimistic. I have support a lot from my institute and from, I would say, Croatian government and from IRA, where I am the member, proudly member of the IRA, I would say, Paul, also to state that yes, we have now, I would say, backing by the Croatian government, Ministry of Education and Ministry of the Culture, backing of our colleagues from the Jasenovac Memorial Site in researching this topic. We are now opening the door for the researching for the new mass crime and also the IRA politics of the safeguarding place charter of the mass crime also give me an additional motivation for researching this topic in Croatia.
Thank you, Daniel and Hussein, also for the question. If we can take 3 more minutes, because I have also more questions. And before I will ask more, I'm asking the audience if you have any comments or questions.
Anna, if I may,
Okay.
Good,
Yeah.
good evening to all. Thank you, Daniel, for this. Well, it was interesting this moment when you mentioned the period 1941 when started the Ustasha regime, and they started like to purifying the race and who are not clean for them, and it was not difficult to identify the Roma, because you mentioned that some of them were living in good conditions in nice houses. That and as well there was the like to the same, like to be Serbian or not sure how to name them, if they are Serbian or Roma. If you can some few words to say, if you have some reports or sources, how it was, who was identifying them, because I think that they started to hiding or themselves declare that they are another nationality. That's
Yes,
short
thank you.
question. Thank you.
Yes, Jan. Good question also. Process of assimilation and standardization was especially evident in Croatian area from the second half of 19th century. And when we are talking about mid-war years, before Second and First World War, we see that a lot of Roma are sanitarized. They are living in on the edge of the villages. They are living in generation and generation as a part of these villages. Why I'm talking about this? Because when Ustasha came to power, they have also support from the local population. When they deported the Roma, local population often came with Ustasha and said, this house is gypsy, this house isn't gypsy. This house, yes, this is half and half, this is half gypsy, half Croatian and so on. And a lot of Roma lose their own identity, especially in the 1920s and 1930s, and they declared themselves, especially in the eastern part of Yugoslavia, in Serbia, Montenegro, no, also in Montenegro, like in Macedonia and Kosovo, as a member of the majority population. Similar thing happened also in Croatian area. When Ustasha came to power, they have perception, they declared themselves as good Croats, as very good Croats. I have numerous cases where Roma tried in 1941, in 1942, ask from Croatian government to exclude them from deportation because they do not feel themselves as a Roma, but feel and identify as a Croatians. And they have usually support of the local government and local population. I know for the one case, I don't have, if we have time, but for example, one area very near Zagreb called Velika Gorica, where is now airport of Zagreb. On the place of the airport was the Roma establishment, Roma houses. And they were deported because the Germans occupied this area during the war, and they enlarged this aerodrome. And consequence is that they deported the Roma in the camps. But who Roma who then were not at the present, who work in the nearby villages for the Ustasha, came in to see what happened to their family. They said they were deported. What we will do with you? They said, please do not deport us. We are good Croats. We refuse to run with the partisan to the forest. We just want to give us opportunity to live. And the local authorities, Ustasha authorities, gave the documents and sent to the Minister of Interior stating they are good Croats. They are not gypsy and they must be safe. But lacking of information, I don't know what happened at the end with them. But you know how this is difficult to say. Can we say that this is collaboration, or can we say strategy of surviving during the war? These cases are very complex, and we as historians must not be the judges, to point out, yes, you are wrong, you are not wrong, you are a collaborator, you are not. The question of collaboration is, for me and most of the historians, still taboo topic in our historiography. We still didn't open this topic, collaboration from the Roma during the war.
Thank you
Thank
so
you very
much.
much, Daniel.
Thank you, Daniel and Jan, for the question. More comments, questions? Then I will just ask very briefly one more question. And actually, in terms of collaboration in Jewish studies, in the Holocaust studies, for very many years, this topic of collaboration also was a taboo. And still, when we talk about Jewish police or Jewish collaboration, not always it is accepted in different audiences, including academic. So for Roma, we just started basically all research. I think this topic will find itself in maybe 20 years only, when people will understand, I mean people in broader way, academics, educators, and policymakers, when they will understand that studying this is as well very important. And the very last question. Okay, we know from the German sources that in the beginning they were a little confused how to kill the Roma and to deport as a social elements or on racial basis. And eventually we know that in most cases they decided on racial basis. But my question, if you could find any documents that Roma were killed as social elements, as just poor people who are wandering, who like vagrant people, like all those stereotypes which we usually see.
Yes, I don't know that at the end probably they were killed, but when Ustasha came to power, Ustasha has the mission that they also will racially purify the Croatian people, and also will purify the Croatian people also from the so-called sexuality, the deformation, prostitute. One of the first law that they passed was against the swearing. If you swear in the public, you will be punished, and something like that. They forbid prostitution, etc., etc. Why I'm telling you about? Because they have done so-called roundup against the homeless people and against the wandering people that are still going on, and probably among them were also the Roma. But when I try to find the identification in the documentation that is still preserved in Croatian archives from this, especially this was, as Paula, I don't know if she's still here, especially it is important about the position of the Roma in so-called Italian territory of the independence of Croatia, in Dalmatia and Istria, when the local government with the prefecture, with the police, was very frightened about the connection between Roma and local partisans, local communists, in helping local communists to get across the border and so on. And this was for the Italian police, for the prefecture in this place, it's very hard to define who is Roma, who is not. All the so-called wandering people, they described same as the Roma, and they were deported. But the question is this really Roma or not? We cannot conclude just because of surnames, and if we don't have any this kind of precise determination in the sources, we must be very careful in stating that. Probably, to answer in shortly, probably yes, but it's very hard to find concrete historical sources that can confirm it.
Thank you so much. And Miriam Carola from Vienna also. Thank you, Daniel, for the great presentation. And actually to the organizers as well.
And
which
to
is
the
very
organizer.
pleasant.
And also, yes.
Stefan.
Stefan and you,
Stefan.
yes. Thanks.
Thanks.
So thank you so much. I think we should conclude because already we're a little bit late. And I still have more questions and we will continue, of course, because yeah, I think this topic is very important. And again, thank you so much, Daniel, for such a comprehensive answers to the questions and amazing presentation. And to say everyone basically goodbye for the next academic year. We don't know when we will start, September or October, but definitely we continue next academic year. And Stefan, if you want to conclude our session, please do it.
Well, thank you, Daniel. And as said, we will continue the sessions in September, starting in September or October, and potentially also include some roundtables for open discussions on certain topics, which could be also an interesting twist to this thing, keeping in touch. So thank you very much. And then goodbye, everybody.
We'll see some of you in Glasgow, I hope.
Yes,
Huh?
yes, definitely.
See you in Glasgow.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.